Do you think that in the Middle Ages, everyone walked around in shiny armor and slept in huge canopied beds? Not at all. In reality, life was very different, and it depended on who you were, a peasant, a craftsman, or a noble. Let's take a peek into their bedrooms and wardrobes. Life of a common peasant. Early morning in a village. The gray dawn lights up the straw roofs, and the rooster's crow echoes across the fields. A villager slowly rises from his bed, which looks more like a pile of straw than a soft pillow. Multiple people often slept on this bed at once. Father, mother, children, sometimes even domestic animals. The warmth from the animals was considered a bonus rather than problem. Sleeping arrangements. Straw or hay stuffed into sacks, sometimes with a wooden frame, but usually just on the floor. Bedding was rare, rags, coarse fabric, or simply leaves. Blankets? Sometimes old coats or pieces of wool cut from older garments. There's no hint of comfort. Nights are cold, summers damp. But for a peasant, this was normal life. They woke at dawn, often nudging each other awake with foot or shout. Get up! The livestock must be tended. Peasant clothing. Simple, coarse fabrics, linen, wool. Knee-length tunic, sometimes tied with a belt. Footwear was rare, often barefoot or in leather sandals. In cold months, they wore cloaks or woolen capes, sometimes with hoods. Colors were almost non-existent. Clothing came in natural shades, brown, gray, dirty white. Bright colors were expensive and reserved for the wealthy. Everyday details. All clothing was homemade, often by women in the household. Craftsmen repaired and stitched garments. Changing clothes daily was rare. Washing was infrequent, and water wasn't always available. Picture a peasant waking up in the morning, putting on his tunic, draping a woolen cloak over his shoulders, and going to feed the pigs and cows. His clothes were already soaked in smoke from the hearth, animal hair, and dirt. Contrast with the nobility. While peasants slept on straw and wore rough clothing, nobles woke up in luxurious canopied beds with pillows and feather mattresses. But even there, it wasn't as comfortable as we imagine. Beds were tall and heavy, and pillows were stiff, making sleep uncomfortable at times. Nuance. At night, families slept in the same room. This provided warmth, but also created smells, crowding, and noise. Children might wake during the night. Animals could jump onto the bed, and the neighbor's cat might sneak in to check its territory. Night slowly fell over the village. The peasants had finished their last chores in the fields. The cows were fed, the hearths in the houses glowed, and light from the fire flickered through small windows. The temperature dropped quickly, and the cold dawn left its mark on the ground and straw roofs. People hurried home to warm up and put their children to bed. Peasant sleeping arrangements were primitive. Straw, hay, or leaves stuffed into coarse sacks. Sometimes the straw was laid on a wooden platform, but most often there were no beds at all. Families slept together to keep warm. A man, a woman, and several children shared one bed, sometimes with domestic animals, which added warmth but also caused noise and disturbance. During the night, drafts and cold made sleep restless, and someone often woke from wind or animal sounds. Pillows and blankets were rare. Sometimes they used rags sewn together or old woolen cloaks. Peasants knew the value of every item, so everything was used as long as possible. Ordinary people rarely changed bedding. Sometimes a bed was not even cleared until spring. Clothing was also important, although coarse. Tunics, cloaks, and capes made of wool and linen protected from cold and rain. Footwear was minimal. Simple sandals, sometimes even bare feet. Children often wore adult clothes or hand-me-downs from siblings, and bright colors were almost non-existent. Every piece of fabric, belt, or cord was valuable because new material was expensive or hard to obtain. The nighttime routine of peasants included checking the hearth and animals. Before sleeping, they would extinguish the last embers to prevent accidental fires, feed chickens, pigs, and dogs. Only after these tasks did the family lie down to rest. Sometimes the elders would tell children stories or legends as the fire gradually faded and darkness filled the room. The contrast with noble life was enormous. In castles, bedrooms were spacious, with high canopy beds, feather mattresses, and silk sheets. In the evening, servants brought clothing for the next day, tunics, cloaks, and jewelry. Nobles wore silk nightshirts or fine wool pajamas, while feather pillows supported their heads in an elevated position, which was customary at the time. Nighttime rituals in castles included locking doors and windows, checking security, lighting candles, and preparing hunting or court garments for the morning. Sometimes kings or nobles held meetings or discussed business at night, but mostly the night was for rest and preparation for the next day. Noble clothing also changed with the seasons. In summer, they wore light linen tunics, sometimes decorated with embroidery or gemstones. In winter, they wore wool and fur cloaks, fur hats, and gloves. Colors and fabrics signaled status. The brighter and more expensive material, the higher the person's position. Even nightwear demonstrated wealth. Fine silks and soft wool were standard in castles, but completely inaccessible to peasants. Thus, the medieval night was very different for people. Ordinary peasants slept in cramped conditions, cold, and with the noise of animals, while nobles rested on luxurious beds, in warmth and silence, surrounded by servants and precious fabrics. These contrasts highlighted not only the standard of living, but also how clothing and sleeping arrangements reflected social status, habits, and opportunities. The night ended with dawn, when the first rays of the sun illuminated the village and the castle, and life began again. Peasants faced another day of work, while nobles prepared for new duties, ceremonies, and hunts. Even with simple technology, people built a world in which every object, every piece of fabric, and every mattress had its own meaning. Early morning slowly wraps the village in golden sunlight. Smoke rises from chimneys, and the first crowing of roosters echoes along the quiet streets. Peasants awaken on their straw beds, throw off coarse blankets, and begin preparing for a new day. Winter or summer, it makes little difference. Each day demands labor. The peasant's morning routine includes lighting the hearth to prepare breakfast, feeding livestock, and checking crops or tools. Children, already awake, help with light chores, collecting eggs, fetching water, or preparing firewood. Morning clothing is simple but essential: a wool tunic, a cloak, sometimes a belt, sandals, or even bare feet. The damp morning dew and cold air make every piece of cloth valuable, not just in money, but in warmth. While the peasant family prepares breakfast and sets off to work, a different rhythm begins in the castle. Nobles rise slowly in their spacious bedrooms. Servants bring fresh bedding, morning tunics, and jewelry for the day's audiences. Breakfast itself follows a ritual: fresh bread, fruits, cheese, and sometimes eggs or meat. Morning duties for nobles include planning the day, preparing for meetings, hunting, or ceremonies. Noble morning clothing reflects status: silk tunics, embroidered cloaks, jeweled belts, and bright colors. Even footwear matters: soft leather boots or shoes adorned with patterns or buckles. In cold weather, fur cloaks, gloves, and hats are added. Each element of clothing signals a person's rank and opportunities. Meanwhile, peasant household details seem modest but practical. Buckets of water, coarse wooden spoons, metal pots over the hearth, all used daily, each with a purpose. Morning is a time to check tools, gather fuel, and prepare for field work. The contrast between noble and peasant life is visible in small details: feather mattresses versus straw beds, silk tunics versus wool, breakfast with fruits and cheese versus simple porridge. Yet for both, morning is the start of work, the start of life dictated not only by choice but by duty. During the first hours of the day, the village fills with the sounds of work: livestock bleating, chickens crowing, a blacksmith's hammer ringing in the distance. Children assist parents, women fetch water and prepare food. In the castle, servants arrange furniture, polish weapons, and prepare halls for daily audiences. Even the space defines action. In the village, limited huts. In the castle, spacious halls with windows framing the rising sun above the fortress. Thus, a medieval morning is a harmony of labor and order, setting the rhythm for the entire day. Peasants and nobles, despite differences in status and comfort, begin the day preparing clothing, food, and tools that shape their lives. Every object, every morning, every piece of fabric in bed has meaning, creating a medieval world where routine, labor, and status intertwine in daily life.